Throughout this land today there are men who have heard their call. They are our faithful ministers, God's watchmen on the wall. There is a special crown for them in heaven, so I'm told. God bless these faithful ministers, they're watching for our souls.
Welcome to the Watchman's Call. We invite you to study with us the ancient prophecies of the Bible and witness their fulfillment in our modern times.
I see an ancient city surrounded by a wall, and as the night approaches, I hear a watchman call. To all God-fearing citizens, let each heart prayerful be. It seems there's been a rumor, an approaching enemy. Watchman, watchman, tell me what you see. Will there be...
Okay, folks, today we're going to talk about one of the darkest scenes in the whole Bible. The amazing thing about this story is that when people read it, Gail, a lot of times they read past it real fast and they don't really stop to pay attention to what's actually going on in the story. You got your Bibles, you can read this yourself. It's in Mark chapter 5. We're going to just read verses 1 through 13. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadareans. And when he had come out of the boat, talking about Jesus, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had been bound often with chains and shackles, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles just broke in pieces. And neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, that you do not torment me." Then Jesus said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." And then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we're many." Also he begged him that he would not send them out into the country. In other words, don't destroy us. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there, pretty close to them, near the mountains, it says. So all the demons begged Jesus and said, "Send us to the swine that we may enter them." And at once, very important right here, Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There was about 2,000 of them. And the herd ran violently down the steep place and drowned in the sea.
You know, when we read the Bible, we like to visualize what Jesus was talking about, or whoever in the scriptures is talking to us. You know, you follow a trail and you're just watching the movie in your head. And when I was listening to you, you know, I've read it over and over again, but I think about when Jesus walked among the tombs, in comparison, the setting is about the same as a cemetery or a graveyard. If we think about walking through a cemetery, walking through a graveyard, we are walking through the place of the dead.
Right.
So even though they had tombs and caves, whatever it was at that time, Jesus was walking in the graveyard. The Pharisees and the scribes that Jesus talked about in the synagogue, you're in a setting, in a congregation amongst somebody telling you how to live. In the synagogues, they're teaching or trying to advise you how to live your life. Jesus didn't think a whole lot about the one he visited, because what he said in Matthew 23 and 27, you're like whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones. Think about that. You're like a graveyard in here. This is like the dead. I like to visualize what the Bible's trying to say. Jesus knew where the Gadarene demoniac was, and he knows where we are. He knows where you're sitting. He knows where you're listening. He knows what you're not listening to. But just remember, whitewashed tombs means exactly what it sounds like. It was tombs or mausoleums that have been covered with white paint. So they look beautiful on the outside, all dressed up, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. This speaks to the spiritual condition of the scribes and Pharisees outwardly. They were holy and clean on the outside, but inside they were spiritually dead. You know, I don't want to be led. I don't want to go blind, following the blind, and I don't want to be walking the path to death by following a bunch of dead folks, you know, trying to talk and teach somebody the way of life.
So the man that came out to Jesus from the tombs, we have to understand a couple of things about this guy. He wasn't just troubled, right? He wasn't just struggling with constant temptation. Folks, he wasn't just dealing with inner thoughts or, all this emotional distress like people have today that we say is so bad, and it is. We know people that are, man, just really burdened and bogged down with emotional distress. It's real.
Right? So bound up that they can't even think.
Right.
They're not free to think.
You
they can't
probably-
get outside their own head.
No, right. And we're sure y'all know, everybody knows somebody that fits that category. And if we really slow down with this story, we'll know somebody that will fit in this guy's position. Maybe not so totally possessed with legions of demons, but having the same problems that this guy's had. That's what we're talking about, slowing down and reading the story and see what all Jesus dealt with at one time, but then seeing how we can deal with things on a separate basis. Anyway, so this guy, man, he was eat up. He was just eat up with problems. He was completely possessed and totally overtaken with evil. He had absolute no control over any of it. It's really important to remember that. So the writer of this book, the book of Mark, they were very intentional with the language that they used when they said he was possessed by so many demons. When Jesus asked for a name, it was unnerving. Probably the disciples that was there with him, it probably shook their bones. Legion, for we are many. Can you imagine being in the presence of somebody so evil that if you asked the demon in them, if you had the power to do that, and we actually do, what is your name? And they looked you straight in the eye and said, Legion, for we are many, your blood would run cold. It gives me chills, really, just to think about how evil that actually is. And yet, there Jesus stood right in front of him and never flinched, never backed off. Do you know a Roman legion is, there's thousands. I don't remember the exact number. We can find it out, but it's not a small number. It's thousands. That's how many demons were dwelling in this man. Now, whether it was literal or symbolic, the message is unmistakable. This was not one little spirit. It was an overwhelming infestation of darkness, of evil, that was tied up in this man and had total control. Think about it. They bound this guy up. They thought they could literally take natural chains and bind evil up. Folks, so you understand what we're dealing with in this time and age. Those demons snapped them chains like they wasn't nothing. You cannot take a natural chain and bind up supernatural power, good or evil. Okay? So let's take a look at this man. He lived among the tombs. He didn't live over by them, down the road from them. He didn't live up the road from them. He lived among the tombs. He lived in the graveyard, like Gail was talking about a while ago. He slept probably on top of the graves. He lived in the graveyard. He slept where the dead were buried. Think about that. He'd been driven out of society, folks, and death itself had become his environment. My goodness. Scripture says no one could restrain him, not even with chains. Like we just said, he broke iron like it was a thread. Day and night, he screamed. He cut himself with stones. He was totally and completely out of control. No self-control. Do we know any people like that now? They just keep doing things that are destructive to themselves instead of trying to come out of the tombs and live. They rather live in the tombs. They rather live in the spiritual tombs, even the natural tombs of this world.
Right.
And it's not, people will think about addiction and alcohol abuse and that kind of stuff. It's not just that.
No, it's not.
There's a lot of people that go to church every day that are entrapped in some kind of a tomb that has got a hold of them and won't turn them loose.
You know, I'm just thinking about what you just said. Think about how you become bound up and wound up in some kind of mental states that you get in, problems from time to time. It's not one thing, one big devastating thing. It's kind of like the story of the little foxes that steal the grapes that kill the vines. It's the little things sometimes that we allow. It's this thing today and it's this thing next week. And you get discouraged because you already fell for that one thing. So the next thing's easier to fall for. You know, you're just wrapping yourself in grave clothes. That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're becoming bound. And to the point that eventually, God willing, and He is, it's going to take Jesus to set us free from those things that we allow to bind us up in this life. We don't come into this life and go straight from the cradle to the gutter in one step. We just don't. You see all these people on TV or on the internet, wherever you are looking, getting your news for the most part, that are bound on the most insane drugs. They're so distorted, so disfigured. If you tried, you couldn't stand in that position. And you certainly couldn't stand there as long as they're standing there. They've got some help. There's something other than a drug involved here that's got these people so bound up that they can't be free. They can't even reason. They can't talk. Nobody can do anything with them. I saw a thing just recently where a junkyard had a lot of homeless people living there, and it wasn't just the homeless. I mean, I could see a bunch of homeless people needing a roof over their head in a junkyard. Nobody's occupying them cars, you know, so they go in there and they find, you know, get in and out of the weather. So I'm not even throwing off on that. But I'm talking about a graveyard that's full of dead men's bones. I'm talking about going into the tombs like Jesus went into. Be much like going, if you're familiar with Anniston over there on 10th Street, or Piedmont over there on 78. Huge cemeteries where there's a lot of dead. There's a lot of people lost their lives to drugs, to alcohol, to wrecks, to you name it. Just kill themselves. You know, they're bound up. It's not just drugs and alcohol that'll bind you up. So we need to realize that. We need to realize it's the little things. They start off, well, that's not really that bad. That's okay. And we esteem it to be kind of innocent. We'll put a little paint over that and make it look a little bit better. Whitewash those tombs. You hear people make a crack about women in their makeup, painting the fence.
Yeah.
Makes them look a little better. And, you know, I got no problem with that. I want you to just visualize what we're talking about. And how did this demoniac become so bound? He didn't come out of the cradle like that.
No.
He wasn't born like that. There were steps that he took in life that got him to that point. How many people do you know that may be walking around you that they got equal amounts of demons? You ever been around somebody that you just couldn't handle? Been around somebody that they were so violent? There's so many things going on with that person. You don't really know exactly what's going on with them. Realize a whole lot of things can overtake you, and we don't need to take that for granted.
That's exactly right. See, Gail, here's one of the parts that, and I hate to say it this way, but it's true. It makes a lot of Christian people, it makes them real uncomfortable to admit that this level of possession, man, it's beyond scary. It's beyond that. I mean, it's beyond just a scary thought. The Bible don't describe every detail, but there's enough clues there so that we understand what kind of isolation this man was in. And that's kind of like what you was talking about a while ago with these folks that are on the streets, not just California, but they get so whacked on whatever the dope is, and they're just so contorted and bent, and they are there for hours. people have to go by and nudge them to make sure they're not dead. And unfortunately, some of them are dead where nobody checked. Anyway, it's that kind of horrifying scene.
Do you see what kind of hell Satan is unleashing on people on this earth in the name of fun, in the name of, just sin, just the things they allow? Oh, it's okay. I'll smoke a little pot today. I'll do a little of this tomorrow. I'll do a little of this next week. It's okay. It's just, recreational stuff.
Yeah.
It is until it ain't.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Just a little bit ain't going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But that little bit will lead to what this guy was at. Listen to this, folks.
It'll bind you up.
Not just the isolation, but if you've ever seen anybody get in a meth rage, man, that's almost like superhuman strength. And that happens because of the chemicals that those drugs trigger in your body. What about the self-harm? You see them laid over fences. You see them twisted up in the roads and just constant, wanting to get that high because those demons won't turn loose of them. Constant torment. They lose all identity. They are completely separated from their community, from their families. You've heard those saying, you burnt that bridge. There's a lot of people out there that's burnt every family bridge there is, and they can't go back.
No.
They can't go back. They
Well, their
burnt the
families
bridge.
are afraid of them.
Exactly.
Just like the people in the tombs were afraid of the demon-possessed one man or two men. They were afraid to approach them.
That's right. They, in all of this, they wind up losing any dignity to the point of where they just don't care. And when that happens, they lose their peace. And without peace, we are just totally lost. See, this wasn't just spiritual oppression, folks. This was spiritual occupation, even to the physical occupation. Demons occupied his whole being, mental, physical, spiritual, his entire being. See, the demons recognized Jesus immediately. They're the ones that begged. They're the ones that negotiated. They're the ones that were afraid of him. And that tells us how real this darkness was. See, evil don't just try to bargain unless it knows it's about to lose. You see somebody evil, they're all mouthy and brash and they're all hauled in there until the gun's turned around on them, until they're trapped, until there's no way out. And then they start trying to bargain. And it's not just the person doing it, it's the demons inside of them that's leading them to do that. Now, when Jesus allows the demons to enter the pigs, the result was instant chaos. Think about that. Immediate, instant chaos. An entire herd, they went mad. They just went crazy when these demons went into them. Their mental state in those hogs went so violent that they rushed to their death. Gail was talking about she likes to visualize things. You think about that. Jesus and one man standing there. A whole herd of hogs just not too far from them, just eating. Everything's cool, just another day on the hog farm. And instantly, them hogs go, you've heard of hog wild? These are crazier than wild hogs.
Violent.
Instant chaos. Yeah, violent. It scared the people around there. They didn't know what happened. And it shows what those spirits were doing to that man every moment of his life. You think about that. So the next time you see somebody and they're just, you can't understand why they're acting like that. Do what Jesus did. He looked past those demons and he saw the man that was trapped in there. When you see people acting like that, sometimes we have to look past that person, Gail, and see the demons that are in there. And when you do that, before you lay hands on them, you better make sure you're where God wants you to be, because that demon will look right, or those demons will look right back at you in your eyes, and they'll tell you who they are. Truth. We've seen that. We've dealt with that. throughout the years over and over and over. That don't make us something special. But once you go through that on a regular basis, it's not that you learn to respect the demons. You learn to respect the power of God over those demons. And you learn where your position is. Now, Jesus did say, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out the demons. That power is ours to work in. But you better make sure you've got that covering from him and you don't just go out there doing it on your own. Now, when Jesus frees this man, you can read on down past where we stopped, and it says the man was found clothed and in his right mind. He went from all of that crazy torment that destroyed 2,000 hogs. Jesus delivered him from that kind of torment back to his right mind, clothed, sitting there having a conversation. See, there wasn't no process. There wasn't no therapy, and there's nothing wrong with the therapy that people do today for the most part. There wasn't no slow, easy, gradual recovery. It was complete and total restoration. In one moment, that thousands of demons destroyed, Christ reversed his mind. You think about that. As fast as those demons left and made those hogs go crazy, Jesus even faster delivered this man back to his right mind. It was like a blink of an eye, from turning on a light switch from dark to light. Now, this story tells us an uncomfortable truth. The Bible shows spiritual evil as real, it's aggressive, and it's capable of total dominance, total bondage. But it presents Christ as infinitely, most awesomely greater than any evil that could ever be, and that has really ever been on this planet, ever.
That's right. You know, authority is what Jesus walked into that tombs with.
That's right.
He had the authority to set this man free. But he also had compassion. You know, we have to have compassion for people, and we have to walk in his authority. You don't go in and just start grabbing hold in your own authority, or you'll get your head took off.
You sure will.
Just like the other ones in the book. Read the book, watch the movie. You'll see just what was taking place when people tried in their own strength to set somebody free from what they were bound up in. We have to operate in compassion, but not with fear. Fear will not run a demon out.
No, it won't.
Fear will not set a person free. If you're in fear, we have to have godly fear and respect God's authority. But we don't just go in there on our own and grab hold. You'll turn loose.
If you don't believe her on that, you look that up in the scripture, and there's a different accounts of people trying to do that. You can read it for yourself. We advise you to search that out and read it. Now, folks, if this, not this story, if this account of total demonic aggression, dominance, bondage, however you want to say it, if this makes you uneasy, well, it should. Not because it glorifies the dark side, not because it raises evil up to be something, boy, that's just something. Not that. But because it exposes just how shallow our modern understanding of spiritual warfare has become. We're not taught to battle evil anymore. We're taught to sit in church, sing kumbaya songs, and everything's great. Everybody's smiling. Folks, there's a dark side that's working out there that's going to try to destroy you. It's going to try to destroy your children. It's going to try to destroy your family, your friends, your marriage, your finances. Its whole intention is to find you at a weak time and jump on you just like it jumped into that herd of swines. It don't care if your baby's laying there dying. Evil don't care if you just hurt your grandma because you jacked up on whatever kind of dope. It don't care. All it wants to do is destroy you and everybody around you. Remember we talked about the family ties? Evil's carrying around torches and it wants to burn every bridge you got. So you have to be careful, but understand this this story, this event that happened in the Bible is to let us know, even if you see somebody in this state. No, maybe I should say, especially when we see people in this frame of mind or this state of spiritual torment, those folks, they need deliverance. And it ain't always in the street. You got good people sitting in church pews that are enslaved to different things that are tormenting them every day. It could be one of your grandkids. It could be your husband or wife, and you never know it. You just know there's just a little something going on, but you don't know. And I'm not saying that they're tied up in something evil, but maybe they're tied up in a disease that they hadn't told anybody about. It could be that bad. One of the most overlooked details, Jesus went out of his way. Y'all heard Gail say that a while ago. Jesus went out of his way to reach this man. How important is that? How many times do we go out of our way to avoid that man? You see him on the street and you don't look at him. You know, you turn your head, you walk past them. And I know there's cons and there's line stuff. We'll work for food. My baby's and my wife's down the road. I'm out of gas. We've drove all over this country and we've heard every lie you can imagine. So what do you do with them? You don't ignore it. You don't enable them. If nothing else, pray for them. If you're sitting in your car and you see somebody over there, one of those signs, don't just turn your head and talk about them. You don't know what's going on with that person. You don't know what got them to that situation. Pray for them. If nothing else, pray for them. Think about it. He didn't just go a little bit out of his way. He crossed a sea. He went into Gentile territory. He went into the graveyard, into the very presence of a legion of demons. Intentionally, Jesus did this. And he took his disciples with him to teach them how to deal with this. He didn't go there to debate. He didn't go there to talk about this point or that point. He went there to rescue one soul, folks. Everybody else had abandoned this man. They had said, okay, just leave him in the tombs. I know he's a racket maker and I know it gets on everybody's nerves, but let's just sing louder so we don't hear him. He had been totally abandoned and cut off by society. Jesus went way out of his way, totally, completely out of his way for that one soul. He says, the fields are white, the harvest is ready, but the labors are few. So what you going to do with this? This wasn't just a healing story, folks. This was a total rescue operation.
Just today's headlines. We're living in much the same picture as you were just reading out of that out of Mark chapter 5. The same scenario. People are bound today, and it still takes Jesus to see it.
That's right.
To see beyond what's got you bound and what it takes to set you free. Nobody but him. He's the only one that can do it. It's not all about the shout and the dance. A lot of synagogues, they want to judge your faith or judge your relationship with the Lord on how you can shout and dance and sing and how happy you are. Sometimes it don't feel good to be a Christian. Sometimes it's really painful to walk on this earth and to endure some of the things that you see taking place. How do you think Jesus felt?
So this is what we want to ask you to do, folks. Open your Bible, turn to Mark chapter 5 and read this story slow. And while you're reading it, ask God to help you be able to be one of the people that'll go out of your way. And you have to be careful with this to help that one soul. Because who knows what that one soul will accomplish for Christ. All because there was an obedient worker for Jesus that reached out to him. Don't just go jump out in the middle of Atlanta or Birmingham or wherever and thinking you're going to save the world. because you may not come back from that. Ask the Lord to show you what to do about it. And folks, the next time you see people on the street, the next time you hear that mouthy drunk down the road or wherever it's at, ask yourself, what is controlling him? What's making him do that? Because we wasn't designed for that. We were designed for peace and community. Y'all be blessed, and we appreciate you spending your time with us, and we look forward to talking with you again.
It seems I hear a prayer. Oh God above, look down in love and keep us in your care. Watchman.
Thank you for joining with us here at the Watchman's Call. My friends, Jesus is coming back very soon. The signs for his return are showing up all over the world, even as we speak right now. Our job is to reach as many people as we can and warn them about his return. And you can help us do that by sharing these messages with everybody you know. That means the saint and the sinner. Everyone must be warned, and we don't have much time left. Y'all be blessed and keep watching. And remember, leave us a comment to let us know your thoughts and concerns.